It was supposed to be a celebration. Balloons lined the dining room, candles flickered on a 3-tier cake, and my entire family had gathered to toast my mother's 60th birthday. I sat near the end of the long table, smiling politely, doing what I'd always done, trying not to take up too much space. Halfway through dessert, Mom tapped her glass with a spoon. The chatter died down, and she stood, beaming. "I have an announcement," she said. "I updated my will, and I want everyone here to hear it." I felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't expected her to bring that up on her birthday, but then again, my mom loved a stage. Her voice was steady, almost proud, as she continued, "Everything I own, the house, the savings, the jewelry will go to my daughter Emily." My sister's face lit up. Gasps and nods rippled around the table. Then Mom added, almost casually, "As for Jessica, she's been cut out. She'll be fine on her own." The room fell silent. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the sting of humiliation as relatives glanced at me with awkward pity. Emily smirked, raising her glass like she'd just won a prize. My father kept his eyes on his plate. I sat frozen, my fork untouched. I wanted to crumble, to scream, to ask why, but instead, I folded my napkin calmly and placed it on the table. Because what my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been hiding something. And when the time came, her will wouldn't matter at all. My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 30 years old, and if I had to sum up my childhood in one sentence, it would be this. I was the daughter who blended into the wallpaper. We grew up in a modest house just outside Indianapolis. My dad worked long shifts at a factory, while Mom ran the household like it was her personal kingdom. And at the center of that kingdom was my younger sister, Emily. Emily was the golden child. She had Mom's smile, Mom's sharp wit, and the uncanny ability to turn even her mistakes into entertainment. When she failed a math test, Mom laughed it off and said, "She's just not a numbers person." When Emily skipped curfew, Dad shrugged and muttered, "Teenagers will be teenagers." But me? Straight A's were expected, not celebrated. If I came second in a competition, Mom would purse her lips and say, "Why not first?" I never got the benefit of the doubt, never got the gentle excuses Emily enjoyed. I was the responsible one, the fixer, the invisible support holding everything up. I learned early that praise wasn't coming. So I poured myself into quiet victories, scholarships, summer jobs, long nights studying, while Emily went out with friends. I saved money in envelopes, stashed books in my bag, and built a world inside my head where my worth wasn't constantly on trial. But no matter how much I achieved, at home it never mattered. Emily's B- was a bigger event than my full-ride scholarship. Her new haircut got more applause than my college graduation. Over the years, I stopped trying to compete. Instead, I started building something of my own, carefully, quietly, far from their eyes. I didn't tell them when I picked up extra work, didn't share when I invested my first bonus. They wouldn't have cared. And maybe that's why Mom felt so bold standing there on her birthday, cutting me out of her will like it was nothing. She believed I had nothing. But the truth? I had been preparing for that moment all along. As the years passed, the gap between Emily and me only grew wider. Every holiday, every family gathering, it was the same script. Emily would arrive late, but be treated like royalty. Mom would gush over her new clothes, her new haircut, the new car she couldn't even afford without maxing out credit cards. And me? I was the quiet shadow in the corner, my accomplishments dismissed with a nod or a half smile. When I bought my first car with cash I'd saved from 2 jobs, Mom barely glanced at it. But when Emily financed a flashy SUV she couldn't maintain, Mom bragged to the neighbors as if she'd just won the lottery. The favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. It was a performance, and I was the unwilling audience. At Sunday dinners, Mom would make comments like, "Emily just has that spark. She's the one who'll carry on the family name." I'd sit there with my plate of food growing cold, biting my tongue until it bled. But what really began to gnaw at me were the whispers. I'd catch snippets of conversation when Mom thought I wasn't listening, mentions of adjusting things in the will, or making sure Emily's set for life. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was letting my own insecurities play tricks on me. But the signs piled up. Emily grew bolder, mocking me openly. "Don't worry, Jess. Mom and Dad will take care of me. You'll figure something out, I guess." And every time, Mom stayed silent. Sometimes, she even smiled. That was when the suspicion solidified into certainty. They didn't just underestimate me. They wanted me small, dependent, forgettable. They wanted Emily to shine, even if it meant burying me in the shadows. So I stayed quiet. I let them believe their version of the story. I stopped sharing details about my life, stopped telling them when I earned a promotion or signed a new contract. The less they knew, the better. They thought they were cutting me out. What they didn't realize was that I had already cut them out of my plans a long time ago. When Mom made her announcement at that birthday dinner, it wasn't just the words that stung, it was the way she delivered them. She stood there, smiling like a queen handing out jewels, her voice light and cheerful. Everything I've worked for will go to Emily. She deserves it. Jessica, well, she'll be fine on her own. The room erupted with polite laughter and clinking glasses. Emily leaned back in her chair, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. My aunt patted her hand. My cousins whispered congratulations. Not a single person looked at me, not really. They just glanced quickly, almost embarrassed, before looking away. I sat frozen, my fork poised above the cake I never tasted. My chest ached, but not from shock. Somewhere deep down, I'd been waiting for this moment all along. Mom had finally said the quiet part out loud. For years, I had fought for scraps of approval. I had worked twice as hard, for half the recognition. And now, with one smug announcement, she had made it clear. No matter what I did, I would never be enough for her. But instead of shattering me, the words brought a strange, steady calm. I folded my napkin, placed it neatly on the table, and forced myself to breathe. They thought cutting me out would ruin me. That without their approval, without their inheritance, I'd crumble. What they didn't know was that I had already built a life that didn't need saving. And when the time came, I would show them. The truth was, I had seen this moment coming years ago. While Emily spent her 20s chasing parties, maxing out credit cards, and leaning on my parents for bailouts, I had been quietly working. I kept my head down, never bragged, never posted much on social media. To my family, I was boring Jessica, the one who never quite measured up. But behind closed doors, I was building something. After college, I took every overtime shift I could get, saving until my hands ached. I rented a small apartment and lived simply, funneling every spare dollar into investments. First, a modest index fund, then a small condo I renovated and rented out, then another property after that. By the time I turned 30, I wasn't just getting by. I was financially free in ways my family couldn't even imagine. But I never told them, because I knew if I did, they would twist it. They'd demand to know why I wasn't sharing. They'd dismiss my work as luck, or worse, try to take credit. So I let them believe the story they wanted, that I was scraping by, surviving paycheck to paycheck, always one step behind Emily. Every holiday, when they laughed at Emily's flashy outfits or new gadgets, I sat quietly, knowing she was drowning in debt. Every time Mom sighed and said, "Emily just has that spark you don't," I bit my tongue, remembering the growing balance in my savings account. And now, with Mom's announcement, I realized just how right I'd been to keep my secret. They thought they were cutting me out of something vital, but the truth was, I had already cut them out of mine. I didn't need her house. I didn't need her jewelry. I didn't need a single cent from the will she dangled like a crown. Because what Mom had never bothered to see was that I had built my own empire. Quiet, steady, and untouchable. And the day she cut me out was the day I finally decided maybe it was time to stop hiding it. Not to win her approval, not to make Emily jealous, but to remind myself that I was never the powerless one in this story. A week after Mom's birthday, I asked the family to meet at my apartment for dinner. They agreed, probably thinking it was a farewell gesture, before Emily stepped into her rightful inheritance. Emily strutted in first, dressed in a new designer coat I knew she couldn't afford. Mom followed, radiant with smug satisfaction, Dad trailing behind like he always did. I served the food, poured the wine, and let them chatter. Emily boasted about the vacation she was planning once Mom's estate came through. Mom nodded proudly, as if she'd already passed down a throne. I smiled politely, letting them dig the hole deeper. When dessert came, I set my fork down and said, "There's something I'd like to show you." I pulled out a folder from the side table, thick with documents, deeds, bank statements, investment portfolios. One by one, I laid them on the table. This, I said, sliding the first sheet across, is the condo I bought at 24. And this, I continued, pulling out another, is the second property I flipped last year. These are the tenants who pay me every month. And here I tapped the stack of statements are the accounts I've built up quietly over the last decade. The room fell silent. Emily's smirk evaporated. Mom's face drained of color. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at them and said, when you cut me out of your will, you thought you were taking away my future. But I was never depending on you. Not then, not now, not ever, Emily sputtered. You're lying. This can't be real. I calmly pushed the notarized deeds toward her. It's all in my name. Every cent, every property, every account. While you were spending, I was building. While Mom was dismissing me, I was preparing. Mom opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. I stood, gathering the papers. I don't need anything from your will. I never did. But I want you to remember something. You thought you disinherited me. But the truth is, I already disinherited you from my life. I placed the folder back under my arm, walked them to the door, and shut it gently behind them. No screaming, no tears. Just silence, the kind of silence that says everything. That night, I didn't just win. I finally walked out of their shadow. It's been almost a year since that night, and I haven't looked back. Emily still calls sometimes, her messages swinging between rage and desperation. Mom tries too, leaving voicemails that sound more like demands than apologies. But I don't answer. I learned something important that evening in my apartment. Family ties mean nothing if they're only chains meant to hold you down. I've built a life that has nothing to do with their approval. My properties continue to generate steady income, my investments grow, and I've even started mentoring younger women in finance, showing them how to build independence without waiting for permission. For the first time, I feel free, not because I've escaped them, but because I finally understand I never needed them. Sometimes I still think back to Mom's birthday, the way she smiled when she cut me out of her will, certain she'd broken me. That memory doesn't sting anymore. It fuels me. It reminds me that the strength I carry now was forged in all the years of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. The lesson I've learned is simple. Your worth isn't written in someone else's will. It's written in the choices you make for yourself, every single day. They thought they'd erased me from their story, but the truth is, I was always writing my own. And the life I've built, that's an inheritance no one can ever take away.